Hi, I'm Paul Peterson, a professor of government and director of the program on education policy and governance here at Harvard University.
And I'm Danny Banks, a student at Harvard. So, Paul, why did you entitle this four-course sequence Saving Schools?
Well, Saving Schools is the title of the book that's assigned for this course. I wrote that book because I wanted to explore two large questions. In this, the first of the four courses, we explore in 7 lectures the first big question. How did an educational system that was once the envy of the world stumble to the point that student achievement in a majority of industrialized nations exceeds that of the United States? We describe the many forces at work over the past several decades that have complicated the work of teachers, students, parents, and administrators. In the 3 subsequent courses, we look at the second large question. We ask, what are the ideas out there that are designed to make our educational system work better? We're not going to find any silver bullets that will magically lift schools to a new level of performance, but we shall identify the pluses and minuses of the many approaches under consideration.
Our first task is to describe the current state of American education and the danger that it poses to the country's prosperity. Paul, U.S. athletes did pretty well in the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia. Are our schools doing equally well at educating the nation's youth?
Well, yes, we did do well. Russia had the home field advantage, but we came in second, and many other countries won at least one medal, and you can see on this slide just how well the top countries did.
But how about in education? Does the United States look as great in reading skills among 15-year-olds as they did in getting medals at Sochi?
Well, that would be pretty hard to do, but amazingly, in the international literacy tests taken in 2012, the United States did not come close to ranking near the top. Instead, it ranked number 13 among all the countries that won both medals at Sochi and took the PISA test.
And what's a PISA test?
Well, starting in 2000, every 3 years, the United States has participated in an international test called the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA, which is given to 15-year-olds around the globe. The test is sponsored by an international organization known as the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD.
Is this PISA test able to make reliable comparisons across countries?
Well, the United States government thinks so, and we'll discuss that issue in a separate lecture called the Methods Lecture, and you're encouraged to take a close look at that lecture.
So, regarding these PISA tests, how are we doing in science?
Well, if we rank low in literacy, we rank even lower in science, number 16 on the list.
And our scores on math?
Well, that's not very good either. The United States ranks 20th, near the bottom among these countries that did so well in the Sochi competition.
Don't we turn out a higher percentage of high school graduates than any other country in the world?
Well, a lot of people think that that's the reason why we rank so low, is because so many of our students do, in fact, finish high school. But the truth of the matter is that's happening all around the industrial world, and we do not rank particularly high. In fact, we rank below the industrial world average in terms of the percentage of students who get a high school diploma.
Is this because we have many students from families where their parents themselves don't have a good education? If we were to only look at students whose parents have a college education, aren't we keeping pace with other countries in the world?
Well, that's another myth that we have, is that our problems are concentrated in the central city or among students who are from disadvantaged families and those who come from families where somebody's gone to college and completed their college degree, that they will do well enough. And it's true that 43% of the students from families where at least one parent finished college are proficient. And that 43% is certainly a lot higher than the 17% proficient in math among those who have come from families who have neither parent with a high school diploma. So poverty rates, education levels, all these things are terribly important for student performance, and the United States certainly needs to do better in this regard.
So then this problem is a social problem, it's a problem with poverty, not a problem with our schools, right?
Well, unfortunately, Danny, we have 2 gaps in American education. One is the gap between families that are doing well economically and families that are not. But the other gap, the second gap, and it's just as large, is the one between the United States and other countries around the world. Even students from families with high parental education do not compare favorably with students in other countries who come from similar families. In this graph, you can see that the United States proficiency rate of 43%, which we talked about just a second ago, that 43% among students who come from families with one parent with a college degree leaves the United States far behind many other countries. You can see the full, not the full list, but a sample in this slide. And in Canada, for example, 57%, not 43, but 57% of the students from such families are proficient in math.
But doesn't the United States have a lot of very talented students? Are we really that far behind the rest of the world?
Well, some people say, okay, we've got the very best of the very best. And so when you look at those students who are performing at the advanced level, the United States must be doing well. Well, the United States does have 8% of its students performing at the most advanced level in math on the PISA test. And I suppose we should take pride in that. But that pales in comparison to the nearly 30% of the students in Korea who perform at the advanced level, or the 23% in Japan, or the 17% in Germany, or the 16% in the country just to the north of us, Canada. So even at the highest levels of performance in our educational system, we are trailing many, many other countries.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP as most people call it, shows how well students in the United States have improved over time. In the methods lecture, we describe why NAEP is a good test for seeing how students have improved over time. Doesn't NAEP show serious improvement gains among our young children?
Well, yes, it's true, Danny, that NAEP shows improvements over time in math performance among children at the age of 9, or about the time they are in 4th grade. As you can see in this graph, white students have gained a lot since 1978, and Hispanic students have improved at an even more rapid rate. There's a closing of the white-black, white-Hispanic test score gap. It's narrowed over time. The blue line, the yellow line, and the pink lines are all moving up, and they've grown closer together. So if this was all we knew about American education, we would say, well, we're moving in the right direction. It's probably time for a national celebration.
How about reading? Are 4th grade students improving in reading as well?
Well, not quite so well, but it's nonetheless not a bad picture. The gap between whites and minorities is greater. The growth among the white population has not been as steep in reading as in math, but the performance of the minority populations has improved significantly. So there has been some closing of the gap. So once again, at the 4th grade level, in reading 2, the picture is not so bad.
But those are just 9-year-olds. How about 17-year-olds when people are starting to graduate from high school?
Well, of course, that's what really counts, because it's when you leave high school and are entering the real world, whether it's going on to the university or into the job market, that's where you need to be demonstrating your skill level. So you can see in this graph what the NAEP shows for those who are at the age of 17 in reading, and you can see that for white students it's just been flat. There's been no improvement at all. And for Black and Hispanic students, it has improved over time, mainly from 1970 to the 1990s, but then it's gone back down again. So the gap is just about as large now as it was 30 years ago.
And in the broader perspective, why does this endanger our prosperity?
Well, after reviewing all the data, Condoleezza Rice, the former U.S. Secretary of State, said, "Human capital will determine power in the current century, and the failure to produce that capital will undermine America's security." In the next segment of this lecture, we're going to look at that question more closely, and we're going to see whether there's any evidence to back up what Secretary Rice has said.